afternoon, Cape Town, TEDx. Wow, thank you. Thanks for having me. As Holly J just explained, my name is Richard Marshall, and I'm just here to talk to you guys about the Cape Town electronic music scene. It's a subject that I study with vigor and that I'm very passionate about. We're in very good shape, and just want to just want to thank all you guys for coming naked. That's really helped me out here. I've never done anything like this before, and I know quite a few people who have. So when I spoke to them about it, they just said, Richard, age-old cliche, picture the audience naked, picture the audience naked. But I just thought, to be topical and remember what I was talking about and to picture what looks like 1,000 people naked, I was probably going to get confused. So thank you all for coming in the nick. It's making me feel a lot more comfortable, as you can tell, I'm sure. So I think the best place for me to start would be just to explain to you guys a little bit about who I am and why I'm standing in front of you, and then I'll shed some light on the scene. So I got into the music industry about 14 years ago in the middle of high school. I had an unhealthy obsession with the rave culture. It was a fantasy world to a 15-year-old. They were very vivid with their flyers and their advertising, and it was a world that I really wanted to get into. And I thought, well, the best way to get into that world would be to be a DJ. So I got a pair of turntables, I started DJing, I earned myself some pocket money throughout high school, and when I matriculated in 1999, I came down to UCT and enrolled in UCT. Did I say that? I came down to Cape Town and enrolled at UCT, which was a huge mistake. I didn't do anything musical that year. I didn't do anything that year. I can't remember that year. But luckily, at the end of that year, through a stroke of luck, I got the chance to audition to DJ at a club called the Fez, the Old Fez, which was sort of Mecca to me at that stage. And from that came a job and a residency, and I really found myself in the exact position I wanted to be in, immersed in the music industry at a young age. I was only 19, and you had to be 23 to get into the club. So I was in over my head and sort of loving every minute of it. And this was good because I made lifelong musical connections, and I realized that there was a living to be made in music. So the next step for me was to study something musical. So I enrolled at Cape Audio College, did a diploma in sound engineering. Following that, I moved to Johannesburg to go and work as an engineer in a recording studio, but Cape Town had me by the short and curly, so I couldn't stay in Joburg for very long. I was back after 6 months. And just threw myself straight back into the music industry. I opened my own business, a recording and sound design studio called Noise Floor. And I really immersed myself in music. I never stopped DJing, and I explored various genres, which worked for me because I managed to meet everyone in all the different pockets of music. This led to me writing about the scene, I guess. I did some sort of commentary on a local level, and then I started writing for international and local magazines and websites. And then most recently, about a year ago, I started a radio show on an internet station called Mother FM, and even more recently, I've started sort of consulting to Africa Milani and Cape Talk, which is a good sign of things to come, I think. So that's me. I guess this is a brief history. Sorry, also, what I forgot to mention was that I wrote a synopsis for a book that I'm proposing to do on the history of the electronic music scene. So it covers the whole scene, but this is a little insight into Cape Town for the last sort of 15 years. So in the mid-1990s, the rave scene in this country was a formidable force. It was huge. Numbers going over 20,000 were attending these parties in really insane venues, abandoned warehouses, train stations, vineyards, and these parties were gargantuan. And because of the sheer size of them, a subculture was sort of developing and feeding off them. Did anyone here ever go to a rave? Anyone? Any ravers in the house? If you ever went to a rave, you'd know that there were like secondary dance floors and chill rooms, and it was actually in these smaller sections that the electronic scene, as I know it and we know it, whoever does know it, was starting to form. If you went to a rave in Cape Town in the mid to late 90s and you went into a chill room, there was every chance you would have heard two guys playing called Fletcher and Roach. Fletcher and Roach had a little duo that they called Crushed and Sorted, very surreptitious name there. And these guys took on, they didn't know anything about music, and they decided to try and produce an album which became sort of the cornerstone, the landmark of electronic music in this country. It was called Acid Made Me Do It. But it was really good, and based on the power of this, acid was the program, by the way, not the drug, but you know. They started African Dope. Does anyone? Yeah, no, like these guys were, yeah, but they are actually some of the most intelligent people I've ever met. Does anyone know African Dope? Are there any old school Cape Townians in the house? So African Dope did really well because, as I said, these guys were really smart and they had a lot of integrity. So they didn't just sign up anyone. Acid Made Me Do It did really well. Their first signing outside of themselves was a guy called Warwick Sony, who used the moniker Kalahari Surfers to produce, and he made a seminal album called A Kazakh Record, which was dub-based. Also did very well, and their third signing, which, as far as I'm concerned, was probably their most important one, was a young dude from Pietermaritzburg called Felix Laband. Felix, I'm sure many people in this audience know who he is. If you don't, you should look him up. He makes some of the most beautiful music I'm sure most of us have ever heard. And his first album was called Thin Shoes in June, and it was sort of a collage of samples that he put together. And it did really well. It sort of blew the music industry in South Africa on an electronic level open because of just the quality of it and the emotion behind it. It showed that electronic music really was, you know, it crossed all races, ages, everyone could listen to it. My parents loved it, and it's just... So African Dope have got this stable, and they come across a young outfit who were calling themselves Max Normal. They were a sort of acid jazz trip-hop outfit comprising of Shaun Tim, who's now known as Mr. Sakatumi, Simon Ringrose, who's known as Cybot, and Waddy Jones, who's now known as Ninja, who's the front man of Die Antwoord, who... Does anyone ever heard of the Antwoord? Okay, so they signed them, African Dope's looking in good shape, more artists come on, and then an evolution of Max Normal was called Constructus, and this was Constructus. Now that's three legends of South African music. The guy on the left with the squint eyeball is Cybot. The guy in the middle is Waddy, who's now known as Ninja, and the guy on the right-hand side is Marcus Wemstorm. Now, all these guys have gone on to have prolific solo careers. The release of Felix's second album, 4 Down the Stairs, on African Dope was probably African Dope's heyday. You can see by that he's like quite an interesting dude. But that's his artwork. So he does art collage and sound collage. It's all very interesting. But this is sort of the time when African Dope starts sort of crumbling under its own weight because they're doing so well, and so sort of factions splinter off. And one of the factions that came from the African Dope disbandment was called Shadowworks. Shadowworks was started by Cybot's older brother, Duncan Ringrose. He was involved in African Dope sort of on an administrative level, and another guy called Ivan Taranjanin, who had a small little eventing company called Prototype, doing very niche techno parties. But these guys got together, pooled their resources, pooled their talents, and they started putting on world-class productions almost immediately. The stable of artists that they had was so prolific that when the top international electronic music artists from around the world were coming here, our guys were getting to play with them. They were being exposed to our scene, what we were capable of doing, what our artists were doing, and our artists were being exposed to what they were doing, you know, always pushing boundaries. So obviously it wasn't long before pretty big event organizers and corporate sponsors and stuff started taking notes of Shadowworks. One of the first companies that ever did this was rocking the Daisies. In 2009, I think it was the first year that Shadowworks were invited to do the second stage at Rocking the Daisies. Now, if anyone's been to Rocking the Daisies, the last couple of years, you'll know that the electronic secondary stage is really giving the main stage a hard time now. It's almost become bigger. In 2009, it was a truck with a little sound system under a Bedouin tent. By 2010, that was the Peanut. Did anyone here go into the Peanut? I mean, that was one of the best dance floors. Apparently one of the most dangerous dance floors ever, though. If that thing had popped, we wouldn't have gotten out of there. But as you can see, it was quite an impressive place. I mean, that's in a field in Darling. And this is the level that the guys had gotten to. So I guess the next logical step was a marriage between Shadowworks and Red Bull, because Red Bull have got invested interest in culture and music all over the world, and South Africa is no different. And because of the nature of Shadowworks and the way these guys were doing stuff, Red Bull actually put a lot more energy into South Africa because of the level of commitment and production that was coming out of our scene. Which sort of leads us up to 2012, I think. Yeah. Sonar is a festival that happens in Spain once a year. It's regarded as the most important electronic music festival of the year, if not the biggest. It probably is the biggest. It's a 3-day festival that happens around Spain during the day, during the night. There's talks, there's parties. It's a fascinating thing. And they've started doing sort of satellite events, seeding the idea of Sonar around the world. And they did it in Cape Town this year, so obviously a natural choice for co-production with the Shadowworks guys and Red Bull. And they put this event on in City Hall earlier this year. I don't know what that's doing there, but how cool is that? That's Digital Rocket it's Rocking the Daisies. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's what our artists were doing on stage. I mean, that was at 3 o'clock in the morning, and so you can imagine what most people thought when they saw that. It was great. That's City Hall in January or February this year. That's Cape Town City Hall. And you can tell by the expressions on the people's faces that it was a good party. This is Sonar seeding themselves in Cape Town, and they put together a lineup that was impressive to say the least. Someone swapped my slides because the blue guy before was meant to come before this guy. He was Brodinski. He was one of the headline acts. Mode Selector headlined the entire event. Massive Attack, who I'm sure most of you have heard of, were also there. And it really was, it was sort of our coming of age party. That's the organ at the front of City Hall. So at the end of this event, obviously the guys who are organizing Sonar shake hands with Duncan and Ivan and the crew and go, well, you guys are on our level. You know, it's not that you're getting there. And all the while, the boys had been planning a sort of coming out party for our scene in the shape of the Cape Town Electronic Music Festival, which was actually just a couple of weeks after this. It was in March this year. This was a really well orchestrated event that relied on no props and no international artists to augment the lineups. It was an entirely local lineup that took place at the Breakwater Garage in the waterfront. It was an urban music festival, 3 days, all locals, mostly Cape Townians. I think 90% of the lineup was Cape Townian. And yeah, that's it by day. That was it by night. It was on a ramp going down, so the stage was at the bottom of the ramp. It was really well done. And this is sort of another image of what it looked like in the day. That's undoctored, and that's what it looked like before the doors opened. So I guess in summation, what I'm telling you is that the Cape Town electronic music scene is doing really well. We're all very happy and very excited about where it's going. All the while these productions are going on, our artists are locked in their studios and they are pushing the boundaries in ways that, if you don't know, would blow your mind. Marcus Wormstorm's got a 4 or 5 piece ensemble now that's avant-garde. It's really bending the rules of music. Cybot is regarded on the international stage as probably one of the best live electronic music performers in the world. If you haven't seen him, I highly recommend the next time you see his name on a flyer, you go and watch this guy perform. Fletcher has got, he's a world leader in AV performance now, doing music and visuals all from the same place, scratching visuals with his decks. And very excitingly, Felix the Band is just a few weeks away from releasing album number 4, which I'm sure many people in this audience are as excited about as I am. So yeah, that's it. If you didn't know anything about the Cape Town electronic music scene before this, I hope that I've shed some light on it, and I hope I've pricked your interest, because it's a budding flower at the moment, and I think it's going to go really far, but obviously we need the support and the love of the South African community to push us forward. But yeah, we're here, and we aren't going anywhere, so join us. Thank you very much for having me.